Shalom, welcome, and love from love, hope from hope, and peace from our Prince of Peace, who will now become the desire of all nations because he is the Lord God of all mankind, Jeremiah 32:27, and he is the good shepherd of all the flocks of man, John 10, and he has not changed, we changed him. And so it came to pass, Cahill Gibran wrote of Rachel, a woman disciple, speaking about Jesus, the vision, and mankind. So I adjure you to relax, grab your coffee, and enjoy this word of praise. So it came to pass that Rachel said, I often wonder whether Jesus was a man of flesh and blood like ourselves, or a thought without a body in the mind, or an idea that visits a vision of man. Often it seems to me that he was a dream, that the Lord was a dream that was dreamed by countless men and women at the same time as they entered a sleep deeper than sleep and a dawn more serene than all other dawns. And it seems that in relating the dream, the one to the other, we began to deem it a reality that had indeed come to pass, and in giving it body of our fancy, and a voice of our longing, we made it to be the substance of our own substance. But in truth, Jesus was not a dream. We knew him for 3 years, and we beheld him with our open eyes in the high tide of the noon. We touched his hands and we followed him from one place to another. He was real, and we heard his discourses, his inspiration of love, and we witnessed his miraculous deeds. Think you that we were a thought seeking after more thought? Do you think we were a dream in a region of dreams? Great events always seem foreign and alien to our daily lives, even though their nature might be rooted in our very nature. But even though they appear sudden in their coming and sudden in their passing, their true span is for years and for generations. Now, Jesus of Nazareth, Rachel said himself, he was the living great event. That man whose father and mother and brothers we all knew. That man, he himself was a miracle wrought in Judea. Yea, all of his own miracles, if placed at his feet, would not ever have rised to the height of his ankle, and all the rivers of all the years would not carry away our remembrance of that master of the wood. He was a mountain burning in the night, yet he was a soft glow beyond the hills. He was a tempest in the sky, and yet he was a murmur in the midst of daybreak. He was a torrent pouring out from the highest heights to the plains below to destroy all things in its path. And in these latter days, he has cast down his love upon earth, and he is guarding over it to make sure it consumes us all. And so in these days, Rachel longed to rejoice with the spring, but yet she could not. But she said, when Jesus came to my seasons, he was indeed the spring. He was indeed a spring of living waters. And within him was the promise of all the waters of the sapphire sea, the crystalline blue ocean above, of the bottomless, unforgettable rather, love that he pours out. And he was the promise of all the years. He filled my heart with joy. And like the violets, I grew a shy thing, was I, in the light of his coming. But now the changing of the seasons of the world shall not yet erase our seasons. And no one can erase his loveliness from off of our world, for he has sunk it in, just as he is now sinking in his sickle of Revelation 14 deep into the earth to reap the earth for his harvest of love. And Jesus was not a phantom, she said, nor a conception of the poets. He was a man like yourself and myself, but only to sight and touch and hearing. In all the other ways, he was unlike us. He was a man of joy, and it was upon the path of joy that he met sorrows of all men. And it was from the high roofs of his sorrows that he beheld the joy of everyone before him. He saw visions that we didn't see, and he heard voices we didn't hear. He heard the voice of holiness, who is our love living within us as we allow it to be as a little child. And he spoke as if to invisible multitudes at times, and oftentimes he spoke through us to races yet unborn. And Jesus was often alone. He was among us, yet not one with us. He always had some by himself time. He was upon the earth, and yet he was of the sky and born thereof. And only in our aloneness may we visit the land of his aloneness. He loved us with the most tender love of all. His heart was as a winepress, and I could approach him with a cup and drink therefrom. One thing I did not used to understand in Jesus, though, he would make merry with his listeners. He would tell all jests and play upon words, and he'd laugh with the fullness of his heart. Even when there were distances in his eyes and sadness in his voice, he was always as lighthearted as he could be. But she came to understand, though, after he ascended. And she said, I often think of the earth as a woman heavy with her first child. For when Jesus was born, he was the first child. And when he died, he was the first man to die. For did it not appear to you that earth was stilled on that dark Friday, and the heavens were at war with the heavens? For that was a darker Friday than any could ever. And so it came to pass that Josephus, the writer of the book of Antiquities, added his voice, and he said that his face disappeared from our sight, but never could his memories be as nothing in the midst. And then Josephus was amazed. Josephus was the historian of the Jews. And it came to pass that he had seen with his own eyes how bleak and dark the skies had been, and he felt the rumbles above all other rumbles, and the quake above all others shook the grounds. So get ready, and please like and share this video about Josephus and the day that the world was shaken silly beyond belief and turned upside down, topsy-turvy. And as I go, remember that if we shine our light, then the light of love will be upon us. But if we hide our light, all is in vain. Vanity of vanities, saith the preacher. And I will be right back. Back again. And so sounds of some really awful chaos rang out all throughout Jerusalem. For without any warning whatsoever, the shattering ground below Calvary Hill trembled mightily as Christ died, with the kind of ferocity that few quakes ever could have caused. For the most furious winds of Yahweh's purest outrage were immediately blowing all around like some real gusty, like a real gusty gale of no damn good. And it was clear as crystal that something was either going to be blown up, blown away, or blown over. For our Son of glory had just passed into the most blessed fate of all fates, with the wind of God blowing him hard into heavenly new directions, unseen by every soul gracing the land of the living. And Jehovah would find his own retribution for the events of that day. Thus the Father's anger was stronger than hatred, as his firmest indignation was kindled and resting upon the sinners who had persecuted the Son of his Spirit of love. Moreover, many souls then became destined to discover that they should have tarried in turning to the Lord, after putting it off day after day and year after year, because all of their ignorance was unloving and ignorant. And then the earth pounding signs and wonders of the unleashed wrath of the Lord God's worst temper then suddenly came forth as a great blaze of his most fiery animosity. A catastrophe was then suddenly being unleashed upon the lands. And in the midst of their false security, would many priests and false witnesses rise in that hour against Jesus being destroyed. And many sorry souls would perish that day in the violence of God's vigilant vengeance. Therefore, earth's crust all over Jerusalem was swiftly experiencing great chaos, for our world's guts were then being wrenched much tighter than the word tightly ever meant before. At the same time, our planet's mood was really downcast, since death had embraced its creator. And nor would Jehovah's temple be spared, since that terrible shaking even caused its sanctuary to fall down, and the veil, which weighed tons, and the Baal's temple at the south tip of that would then be stretched far beyond its breaking point by the fiercest wind of God's most furious ire, that even the hottest fire never could match. And so it is time to get ready. And as the earthquake simmered on down and faded away, yet it was not known at that point that the aftershock would be far worse than that mini earthquake, which was terrible. It dropped buildings on the heads of many, according to the historians at that point. And I will be back